Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back and joining us. It's been quite a while since we've had these discussions. Uh, Big reason that we kind of took a big break. The original reason was because of the holidays, Christmas, New Year's. Then our schedules got really busy right after New Year's. Um, and it took a while to kind of coincide our schedules there. And then in the month of February, we all got sick for the flu season, and that kind of delayed things again. And so this has been a long time coming to get these restarted and start having these conversations afresh and new again. So again, we're excited about these. Um, and so we're gonna try and keep this one really short. Within that hour time frame, we want to not we want to honor each other's time as well as your time. But it'll be really good. So, Javar, you mentioned something about helping us understand the depths on what addiction is like. And so, if you just want to go ahead and start on that, and we'll go from here.
Well, okay. Well, there's so in my addiction, I've experienced some things that a normal person would not experience,
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess it was quite a few years ago. I had gone down to Mexico
Mm-hmm.
and spent a little too much money and was only able to get back up to Corpus Christi, Texas.
Okay.
And when I was there, I was, you know, smoking crack and, doing a lot of different stuff. But so just even that, like my addiction was, you know, I had enough money to get to Mexico, stay down there for a while, and get back, and yet my addiction was too much to the point where I spent all my money and was never because I lived in Wisconsin at the time, and I wasn't able to get back to Wisconsin, and I got stuck down in Corpus Christi for over a year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I got a job doing carpentry, but I was so deep into my addiction that every paycheck was gone almost immediately, and you know, um, but that's not the story that I wanted to tell. I wanted to talk about uh, the reality of addiction and kind of how an addict thinks and puts the drugs or alcohol ahead of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, I was down there for a while, and I had found this spot where uh, you could just go to the window, give them some money, go to the next door, they give you your,
Right.
dope, whatever. And and I had been doing that for, I don't know, it was a couple months, and I knew that they were, I believe they were part of a cartel or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was Texas. So, so I kind of knew that, but, I didn't really think much of it. Just, all I cared about was getting my drugs.
Yeah, I need my fix.
Right. And so, one time I went, well, I went there, and I knew that a lot of guys or people, guys, girls, both,
Mm-hmm.
when they would go there, they would get their stuff and they would go into this, they would go into one of the apartments. It was like a old hotel, but it was apartments, and it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of out in kind of a swampy area or whatever. And but had never been invited in,
Yeah.
and so and I didn't care, I was a white boy, and I was kind of clean cut, and you know, but so somebody looking at me probably wouldn't,
They would not have assumed that.
yeah, they wouldn't assume that that I'm an addict and full blown just gone crazy kind of thing. And so I went there one day and they invited me in, and I was like, oh, cool, and so I was in there and I was smoking crack, and these two guys come in. They got these duffel bags, and I didn't think nothing of it. And they went to this back room, and about 5 minutes later, I felt something on the back of my head, and I didn't know exactly what it was, but it was metal. And I kind of turned to look, and the guy had a shotgun to the back of my head.
Oh man.
And he told me to get up, and he took me to the back room. So we went to the back room, and there's a door, that goes straight out, and you could see that there was like a field it's kind of a swampy field or whatever. And then I started to kind of look around the room, and there was just a mattress, a chair, and then, but there was blood everywhere.
Mm.
And so it was kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like,
This is the end kind of a feeling.
Right. And that's, and so there was two of them, and one of them started saying, we don't know you, are you a cop? They started kind of questioning me and all this other stuff. And they had me stripped down, butt naked.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys went through my wallet, took my license, and he left. And the other guy sat there. And, and he's like, I hope you're on the up and up, because that field has other bodies back there, basically is what he,
Wow.
And so the weird part is that I didn't care.
Mm.
I wasn't thinking about, I thought this might be my last day in this earth.
Yeah.
But all I could think about was there's a bunch of crack out front that I just want to get high,
Wow.
And I asked him, I'm like, well, can I at least smoke something, and he just was like, no, you're not doing nothing right now, and so I kind of sat there, and it took probably an hour or more, and I keep thinking about the fact that all I could think about was getting high.
Yeah.
Like the situation I was in was detrimental. Like,
right.
When I looked around the room, I assumed that there had been somebody or more than one that have had some kind of issue. I don't know if anybody had been killed in that room.
Right.
But I know that it was a very freaky room.
It was the room you didn't want to be in.
You're
and that what I'm picking up on this is like the natural human response of fight or flight, your self-preservation was not functioning in the sense of I just need my fix. Hey, right. I'm sitting here. The stuff I want to enjoy is in that other room. Can you bring it here?
Right. The fear of what a normal person would feel in that situation wasn't there, because all I could think about was getting high. That was it. The whole time, that's all I thought about. Wow. And that kind of gives you an idea as to how an addict function, how their mind works. Yeah. Is that everything is after.
Right.
Let me get high. Anything else beyond that is almost irrelevant sometimes.
Right.
And my life was on the line.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was, because if they felt anything that was out of place, I wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
And so anyhow, I guess it was about an hour or so later, the other guy comes back, throws me my license. Those two said something to each other, mm-hmm. And the one guy walks out, and the other guy goes, "Get your clothes on. You're all right. You're good."
Wow.
And I did not, in that moment, it didn't occur to me. I didn't think about it, how close I was to actually something other than, you know.
Right.
And then, you know, they gave me some dope. You said you can sit here and smoke all day, you know.
Wow.
And I, as a, I mean, you would think somebody that had that situation happen
Right.
would be like, I'm fucking out of here.
Yeah. Give me the door.
Excuse my language. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm out of here.
Going for the door.
Right.
I,
Nope.
yeah.
I sat there for almost 2 days smoking dope.
Oh wow.
You know, it was free because they know that they had, you know, they had to, but, you know, it didn't even occur to me. All I could think about was getting high, you know, and I don't know how to really express how important getting high was above everything else, other than just to explain to you, you know, to everyone that my life wasn't important. It wasn't important. Like, I'm telling you, like,
Yeah.
I was within seconds, minutes of just being gone.
Yeah.
You know, and it didn't matter. All I could think about was, so when do I get to start smoking?
Yeah.
You know, when do I get to get high?
The thing that strikes me is when you said that even at that moment, no self-preservation. Yeah, this could be my final moments, and that thought's gonna be a natural thought. Hey, this is where I'm at. But then
I'm sitting there butt naked
for
over an hour. Like,
you don't want to preserve.
How ridiculous.
Yeah.
That must sound to somebody else, but it was
it's a bythought. It's not. You're not. You're not thinking about that. You're not thinking about your dignity. You're not thinking about preservation.
No.
Your whole mind in that is, I need my fix.
Right.
I'm like, to me, it's like the whole idea of like, I'm sitting here, I'm bored, I want that. It's right there. Hey, as long as we're here, do you mind? Give me some.
I like that you said dignity, because you know, I had no dignity. I was. It didn't matter what was happening.
Right.
Anywhere.
Wow.
I was after getting high, you know, and it was, you know, my time down in Corpus Christi, which is not that far from the border of Mexico, just so everybody knows, but was very, there was a lot of weird things that had happened.
Yeah.
You know, while I was down there, it was a world that I don't know that people could fully understand. You know, but unless if they've gone through it, because I'm sure there's other addicts.
The people who listen to these, you know, they're either families of addicts themselves,
right?
And they've got obviously maybe similar but not the same story.
Right.
And I say similar very loosely because I'm thinking to myself, okay, what other situations have they been in where either their dignity was shot in the moment, or they're not thinking about self-preservation, or even even the idea of like taking care of their children or their loved one. It's like that's all byproduct to orchestrating their day or their time to get that fix.
Right.
You know, that's
you know, the reason I'm telling this is because the family and the friends of an addict, you know, sometimes they're like, why don't you just stop?
Right.
You know, why don't you just, you know, why, or at least cut back, or, you know, why can't you just function, you know?
Well,
so my whole thought on that was that I wanted people to understand that, you know, the first function is get high.
Right.
And everything else is secondary. And it's not because now today, if that had happened, my whole thought process would be different.
Yeah. You
know, but that's how strong addiction really is that you don't care. I don't even know if it's that you don't care, or if it's just that your brain cannot think past
right
the first thing, your first priority, which is to get high and get those drugs.
Well, and like that, the whole idea, I in my mind, having those brain connections. I'm thinking of that idea of like registering the proper actions that need to take place for something. A functional mind saying, well, why don't you just stop? Why don't you just not get involved in that?
Right.
But for an addict mind, they the synapses, just the chemical wiring of the brain has been ingrained to go the addictive route. And so for the functional mind to say, no, you need to stop that, it doesn't work that way, because you have these the you you got to get to a place where the addict realizes, I can't go down those roads anymore first. But if they're still in the middle of those, if you use that synapses, if you use the brain connections as a highway, and you're in the middle of that highway and you're driving down that highway, right? In your case, sitting in that room, uh, no dignity, thinking about the addiction, you're in that highway, you're going down that, you're in that road. And for someone to say you need to stop thinking that way, you need to preserve, it's not going to register.
Right.
Because that, I mean, you have the healthy mind saying, okay, this is where I need to be, and an unhealthy mind saying, no, this is where I want to go. And for the healthy one to say, no, you need to just not do that. It's two different thinking patterns, and that's why it's kind of hard for them to mesh. And that's why there needs to be help. Why there needs to be all these things. I've heard it say from many other preachers. They say stuff like about sin, and they say sin will take you. Sin feels good in the moment. It feels great. Sin is amazing, but it will take you further than you ever want to go, and it'll do things to you never want to do. Right. And that's the kind of, like, we can interpose the word drugs and sin and say, drugs, the addictions will take you further than you ever want to go. It'll do things to you never want to do. But because your mindset is that place, there's a depth there that is missed. I mean, the whole idea that the distance that you went in that moment was so far. And there's people that have countless stories. I mean, here in Minnesota, you go up to the Twin Cities, you go up all these areas, even in your own backyard. There's moments where someone's gone too far, to even to the point of death, and they have no idea that it would ever come to that, because the thinking process is, I just need this.
Right.
And we miss that. And I think having the families understand that your loved ones, without the help that they need to receive, that's the thinking they're going to go down.
Right.
And that they are. It's a process.
So bringing in that whole idea of, because our point in this is that it's not necessarily about the addict,
right?
Although I bring that part to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's more about the people who surround that person. And so the reason that I tell this is because I would like the family to understand, or the friends, or whoever's trying to
the community circle.
Yeah, that addiction, it's not, it's at a certain point, it's not a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why my thought process in that moment wasn't, how do I get out of this?
Right.
I don't understand that. I don't, it doesn't make sense to me now, where I'm like, well, why would I be thinking about getting high?
Right.
Like, that just seems ridiculous. I should be thinking about preserving my own life.
I'm here, unclothed. I'm naked on a random mattress or a chair, wherever you're sitting, and it's like, they got their gun on me. I'm sitting here waiting for this guy to get back, and this is natural person would think to themselves, this is not where I want to be.
Yeah. Well, and most people probably wouldn't even get themselves into that situation.
Right.
Which,
again, the way the addict mind works, though,
right,
is it's that progressive right in there.
Right. And so, like I said, my point is, it's kind of to try and get other people to really fully understand that, that at a certain point it's never, or it's no longer about how to preserve myself, or how to even function at times. It's all about one thing, and it's an obsession, a
Mm.
compulsion that I'm assuming that there are many people who understand what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, um, whether it's about, you obsessively clean something, or there's just, because everybody has that little niche that where
That
they're kind of compulsive about,
well, using
or,
the as opposed to, we talk about addictions in relation to drugs, but taking that word addictions and make it whatever is the addiction, like whether it's
right,
people are addicted to cleaning, the
right,
OCDness, right? I mean,
right,
I'm the guy that in my house, I mean, I can walk into the garage, I close the door, I go into the house, and I'm, it's time to go to bed. I cannot sleep until I go back to the garage, make sure the door's shut.
well,
After the one be the one, like it's,
and
but there's that compulsiveness to it.
right, and and that's obviously not damaging your
No,
life,
it's not, but
but
it's
it
a
gives
kind of
you,
a silly
right, but it gives
relation.
you just a glimpse, I guess, of what it really is like, because I've done things where it's kind of compulsive, where, or not compulsive but obsessive,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought to myself, what,
Right,
like, why does the stove have to be clean,
right,
every single, because I get obsessive about it, and and it sounds silly, but if you really think that whole process through, you start to understand that that it's just, you're not really controlling that,
right,
and but you feel like you're in control,
yeah,
right, but you're not, because you're doing something that you uh isn't necessary, I
right,
guess, or is just like, you have to do it, and you get that feeling, like you have to do it.
yeah,
Well, times that by 100,
right.
and then you might start to understand what addiction is. And I'm not making excuses. I'm not saying that an addict, because they don't have control or whatever else, is excused from anything that they do,
Right.
or even the addiction itself. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to get across is that, that it is, um, for me, it was like I was in the depths of hell. It
But
really was. I was
the
so deep into it,
yeah.
and it was always scary in a way. Not that,
Well, to use the idea,
not that I
like,
was scared, but it was. I mean, if somebody had
yeah,
gone through some of the stuff that addicts go through,
yeah,
that wasn't an addict, they'd be like, "Oh my God,
the 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 PTSD sticks
how do you
in,
even
and
function?"
yeah.
You
Well,
know,
that's like the idea of like using it to put it this way:
Sure.
the monster is stronger than you think.
Mm,
Like let the community recognize that when it comes to addiction and talking about the compulsiveness of it, and the magnitude of what, like, yeah, we're not absolving their action. We're not giving an excuse to
right,
their actions.
right.
That does exist. There's something that's got to take place. But when you are trying to, because again, the addict has, like to use what you brought up, the idea that there is no self preservation. They're not willing to preserve their life. They're not willing to think about what their body needs, whether it's whether
Secondary.
it's all secondary. And so, as a parent, my children don't have that same level of self-preservation that I do. And so there's a moment where I have to step in and take care of them
Right.
because they lack the knowledge or the self-discipline to do that themselves. And so even looking at this way and being like, okay, they're doing these things and they need someone to help them because the addiction that they're dealing with, that monster, is a lot stronger, a lot bigger than we're giving it credit to. And it's going to take them, if we leave them to their own, that monster is going to completely destroy them.
Right.
And they're playing with it. They're playing with that monster. They're not supposed to, but they are.
Right.
And if they're not thinking about their well-being, somebody else has to come in and be like, no, you need to. And that the whole idea, we talked about intervention in the past, and that's where that intervention, where that community says, so one, as a community, we need to know whether you struggle with like silly compulsiveness or an obsessive things about, cleaning the house, the silly little stuff.
Right.
Checking the garage door, tiny silly little things, to the whole other side of the spectrum where you're in full blown substance addiction, and you're in a sketchy motel in
I've been there
God
many
knows
times.
where, Texas, right? And people, even people like, hey, you're gonna spend your fall in a box because on the side of the street because you're in that place. That idea that they played with that monster so long that brought him to that location, and that monster is so big and so controlling. Yes, they're playing with it, but they're playing with it in a willingly, and that monster's got its grips all over their mind, and they're, like you said, you're in a literal hell dealing with this beast. And so as a community, we need to recognize that we're not just sitting there just saying, oh no, you just need to stop.
Right.
That does a great disservice. It's not going to do anything for you. You're like, hey, there's an army we want you to fight. Here's a Swiss Army knife. Have a great day.
Right.
It's stupid.
Right. So, for me, when I finally got clean, I was so broken,
Yeah.
that my heart just felt heavy, and just, I was broken. But even when I was broken, I still was using.
Yeah.
I still was getting high, maybe to cover some of that up.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, for an addict, there gets to be a point where that drug is no longer covering that stuff, and it's no
Right.
longer working. And it's hard to tell when that kind of happens.
Yeah.
But that's probably the best opportunity for someone to be able to kind of be like, here,
Right.
we have a solution,
Right.
and it may work for a moment, and then they might go back.
Right.
I'm, addicts are unpredictable, and um, we don't listen very well.
No. Well, yeah.
Or like I said, we're not really into self-preservation. It's more about self-indulgence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily on purpose, even though it was our choice to start in the first place.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, it's not. There's no control there.
Yeah.
And so um, so kind of what I'm getting at is, well, first of all, like for me, I have been trying to get clean since I was 14.
Yeah.
And I've had little stints where I've had a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there, maybe
Right.
a few years, but I always, for some reason, ended up back
Mm-hmm.
to using, and it always got worse. Every time
Right.
I went back, it just got worse, and this time, I really believe that the reason that I have stayed clean,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, there's multiple. I would say that there's an accumulation of things,
Right.
but the most important thing for me was that I found God.
Yeah.
I even though I'm not really a churchgoer,
Mm-hmm.
and what I mean, and I don't. It's not like I sit out and I have these conversations with people,
Right.
but I know, my relationship,
Right.
with God, and everything that, kind of goes along with that, but, so to me, that was probably the most important thing to me about doing this conversation, is because, you're on God's side and he's
Right.
on yours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I understand that, just in a different, my process is different,
Yeah.
and I think that for anybody who wants to get clean, or anybody who wants to help someone get clean, you need to know God first,
Well,
and because if you don't,
yeah.
and I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to push something on them.
Yeah.
It's just that I'm saying, what God has done for me is He's opened my heart,
Yeah.
and He's given me opportunity to be able to do something like this.
Okay. Well,
And many other things
yeah,
because I do a lot of different things that help me to stay clean.
yeah.
But
Well, and I think you kind of touched on that too, because you have to have multiple, tools.
sure,
But even though you have multiple tools, multiple outlets that are helping you stay clean, the biggest one, like you said, is that relationship with God. We going back, we talk about the monster that is addiction, that is stronger than us on our human level, and yet we read that
well,
there's
that
someone.
monster in my mind is Satan.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
he spends his time trying to make sure that I stay in addiction.
Yeah.
And in those situations, like I was talking about down in Texas, God was watching me,
Yes.
even though Satan was fully in control at that situation.
Well, and that's what
You
the Bible tells us, that God is always pursuing us.
Right.
That He sent His only Easter, Resurrection Sunday, Easter Sunday is this upcoming week, and it's the whole idea, that whole purpose of His death on the cross was to satisfy God's law of sin, of that the idea that we've broken the machine so many times, that God sent His only Son to die in our place, to pay that punishment,
Right.
so that we could have new life. And then, to show how that new life is so possible, Christ raised from the dead on His own power, and now the Bible tells us He sits at the right hand of God, interceding on our behalf to the Father. And so we have this beautiful thing where we are dealing with this satanic monster of addiction, and that there is an almighty God who is pursuing us, giving us the tools. Yeah, He's a gentleman. He's not going to sit there and just like break it and be like, all right, there you guys go. There's a personal choice we get to make. But when we make the choice to have that relationship, there's an additional, like, there's these it when I am weak, He is strong. And so if I'm dealing with an addictive monster and I want to do it in my own strength, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to fail. But then in that failing on my own, when I follow Christ, enter in this new strength that is God, and that's what makes Him so important when it comes to dealing with addictions on any degree,
Right.
and why that's such a vital relationship to have.
And for an addict, it's hard to come to that point because we've done some things
So you said some junk, yeah,
that we are not proud of or fully ashamed of.
yeah,
I should say me, myself.
yeah,
And it's like, well, if God is real, how could He really
right,
forgive me for these things?
Yeah.
And so it takes time. It
Mhm.
really does. And the spiritual part of the program is something that some people get right away.
Yeah,
I mean, it just happens for them,
Yeah.
and I'm happy that happens.
yeah,
But I would say, I guess I would assume that most of us, it's a process and it takes time.
yeah,
For me, it took years,
Mhm.
but it started to happen in these little steps of, I was doing this, and then I was doing that, and then I was doing that, and then all of a sudden one day I'm like, I get it.
Mhm.
All of a sudden it was like, wow. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, like in the program, they call it a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And
The light comes on.
yeah, it really did. It came on, and I realized that there are some things that um, that I place importance on that are really not that important. But I mean, and I'm kind of getting off track here.
No, that's okay. Well,
And-
I think it's
but I'm trying
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say though is that, so for the addict, that's the way that happens.
Yeah.
Okay, but for the people outside of that addict, who, the community around them, I, your best pursuit of challenging an addict is to have your relationship with God
Yeah.
and have him guide you, because
Yeah.
you have to listen,
Yeah.
and that's a hard thing
Well,
to do.
I as a pastor, I've seen this in organization classes, management classes, ministry classes, that you cannot give people what you don't have.
Right.
And so the idea for the community is, if the greatest tool you can give somebody is a relationship with Jesus, a strong walking hand in hand with Jesus, you can't give an addict that unless you have that yourself.
Right.
And that's where we go back to where we talked about that self-care.
It's good for yourself anyhow.
Yeah.
And see, and that's what I mean is that it's hard to explain, but it's not necessarily you focusing on trying to help that person. It's about you focusing on yourself and making yourself okay, because at that point you will be guided in some way.
Yeah. Yes.
And it might be something that you don't even know that
you're
doing.
I told our church. Sorry to interrupt there, but
sure.
I told our church these last couple weeks is, when it comes to living for God and reading the Bible, we can't control how other people are going to conduct their lives.
No.
We have no control in someone else's choices. The only person who has control over their choices is the individual.
Right.
I can control my choices, you can control yours. So when it comes to living for Christ, I can't control that for somebody else. Now I can say, here's the tools, but ultimately it's going to be upon them to take that up. So for me, the best thing for me is, I need to be in this place. For my life to get everything that God wants to have for me, then I need to focus on my spiritual walk with God and have my personal relationship with him. And out of the overflow of that, other things happen.
Opportunity.
And it's the Bible tells us that out of the overflow of the heart, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if your heart is, as the believer, as the community, if your heart is being so full with the love of God, with the Word of God, and with the Holy Spirit, and you're just allowing that just to overwhelm you, and you just allow that overflow just to bubble up, you're gonna have these words that come out of your mouth that are based in something other than yourself.
Right.
And you allow God to lead you, and he leads your discussion, he leads your interactions, and that's what's going to impact the addict's life.
Right.
And what's fun about that is it takes the burden off of the community, because it's Christ working through you,
right,
as opposed to you just doing it on your own strength.
Right. And so, so as an addict, I have a bullshit meter,
Yeah.
I mean? Sorry.
The BS meter.
Yeah, BS meter. And so, if you approach me, and I think the reason that is because everybody in that lifestyle is always on some kind of garbage. They're always trying to lie to you, trying to get you to do this. It's a manipulation. It's so you start to build this.
Well, because you're living in that, and so you learn how to, what you're doing, and so you're hyper alert to other people doing that to you.
Right. So if I approach an addict and I'm not genuine, they'll know, and it might not matter whether they know or not. They might be at a point where they're just like, please, somebody help me,
Yeah.
But so for me, the most genuine that I am in life is when I am walking in a spiritual way.
Yeah.
Through my life, and that goes on and off. I mean, like I have months where I'm not feeling real close to my God, and then there are other times when I feel like we're completely in sync and we're walking, so at the same time, don't get down on yourself if you feel like you're not in that spot. It's okay. The beauty of life is that we have lots of lessons to learn, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think the recognition, and I've told our, some as a pastor, people put me on this pedestal a few times, and I've experienced where people just like spiritual leaders, you get put on this pedestal, and one thing is that I've recognized in some of my peers that have made their mistakes and fallen away from just with code of conduct and the mistakes that they've had to deal with is the recognition that even the most spiritual of us, we're still human.
right.
We're still gonna have moments where forget righteous anger. I'm going to sit there and flip you a new one because you parked in my parking spot. Like the silly little stuff.
Right.
Like we're human.
Right.
And, and like that whole idea, like we have bad days and the good days. We have days where, I mean, there's days where I'm a depressed mess because I'm thinking about all the stuff that went wrong, and that makes me a joy to live with in my home
Right.
for the next couple hours because I'm dealing with stuff.
Right.
Let alone going and having to confront somebody, but that's to realize that I'm still human.
So I would like to say something kind of about that is that one of the most damaging things for an addict in recovery,
Yeah.
and I would like to say for anybody in life in general, is secrets.
Yep.
Secrets can kill,
Yeah.
and I know that people think that, well, it's none of anybody's business, or what I mean, and all this other stuff, but when you hold it in, it's like this, you gave foothold to something that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And it will grow, and I'm not saying tell, the world, or, for me, the world knows my secrets,
Mhm.
And it was hard. It was very hard for me at first,
Yeah.
but then I got to a point where I realized that, well, you can't say or do anything to me that is going to be damaging, because guess what? My skeletons are out there.
Yeah.
My secrets are out. You know what I mean? I don't have to sit and try and protect that anymore.
Right.
I don't have to feel, like, I don't know how to explain it, but so, but talking to someone about it, or writing it down and
Yeah.
then burning it, just
Yeah.
getting that secret out of yourself, give it to God,
Yeah.
whatever. But that can be a real stopper for people in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And to me, it was one of those things that I had to get past. And it's not that I don't care what other people think, but I don't,
Right.
because I am who I am, and if
Yeah.
you don't like it, it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to like me. You don't have to like my past. You don't have to like anything.
Right.
That's not for me to decide.
Right.
And that's what it gave me by my, that stuff getting, my secrets or my whatever getting out, is that it was no longer about anybody else, because that's who you're protecting yourself from when you do that. It's other people, and
Yeah.
I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I don't have to protect myself against anybody,
Yeah.
and and I can imagine as a pastor and in the role that you have, that if you make a mistake, that immediately your thought is, I can't let this out because the congregation,
Yeah.
who knows how people are going to look at this thing,
Oh yeah.
and that's got to be rough, and so, like, my relationship with you is different.
Right.
I understand you're a pastor,
Right.
but I don't see you as a pastor. I see you as my friend.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, so I don't fully understand what you go through.
Yeah.
But I understand that that it's got to be tough because you have other people, and
Yeah.
and so to kind of bring that into what my whole thought on this is that as a community, we can't hold these secrets.
Yeah.
We can't hide what's going on. And the addict has no understanding as to, like we said, self-preservation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so we have to kind of get into that mindset, like, okay,
Right.
this person doesn't have control, but we can't hide for him
Right.
or her.
Well, I think
We have to let those, we
yeah.
have to stop allowing secrets, allowing lies, allowing, you know, who cares about what somebody else thinks? You don't have to be embarrassed.
Right.
Like, you don't have to feel ashamed. You don't have to, because, you know, and the, the way to do that is to stop keeping it a secret.
Yes.
And stop, you know, let's stop using this as, you know, well, it's, you know, let's sweep
Right.
it under the rug.
Right.
No.
Well, that's the thing
do that.
that's the thing that's been happening that we've seen is like there's a lot of stuff that's happening where even within the Assemblies of God, the church organization, the fellowship that I'm with, where this stuff has happened in the past and it was swept under the rug. Well, now that rug's been peeled back and now the junk's being exposed and people are being hurt by it. You know, and that's the thing. It's amazing. The scriptures tell us that confess with your mouth, and he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins. So there's something about confession, opening the secrets, giving it to God, and doing it in such a way where it's like, hey, I'm not going to hide this anymore.
Right.
And that healing now transpires. It's amazing for me, as a grown man, hearing new stories about the relationship my parents had with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And how those stories that they've gone through as children with my grandparents and how that shaped them to altering my perception and healing my perception of my own parents.
Right.
Because they're no longer keeping that a secret from me. They're no longer hiding the junk.
Right.
And they're willing to share that with me. That's allowing me to look at my own parents through a new lens and saying, wow, how transformative that removing that secret helps. And so it's really hard because the addict does things that they don't want anyone to know. They're going to lie about it. They're going to hide it. They're going to sit there and be secretive about it. And even loved ones who know what's going on, they're equally going to keep those secrets as well. I can't let anyone know what little Johnny's doing because it will make the rest of the family look bad. So the whole family's in on the secrets.
Right. And they don't have to be.
They don't have to be.
Right. Because it's not your secret.
Yeah.
You know, you can let it go. And no matter what you think, 9 times out of 10,
yeah,
when you let that secret out, people will be like, okay, you know,
I
mean, they don't, you know, maybe they've had some kind of experience with the same sort of situation.
Everyone's got a testimony. Everyone's got a story.
Yeah.
Everyone's got junk.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, and then being open with your story and allowing that healing process to commence, allowing that healing process to go on. Not only can it help your family by actually dealing with what's really going on,
right?
But then who else is in your proximity who is dealing with a similar issue, who's going to reap the benefits of your well, you know, your story.
Right.
You know, you're extremely transparent today. And what I'm seeing is that who's going to hear this and they're going to be touched, inspired, helped, etc. simply because this is not a secret.
Right. Well, I mean, that would be the hope. But
yeah, exactly.
But so I like kind of what you were talking about is that, you know, like the immediate surrounding of the addict, you know, how they keep it secret, and if they let it out, you know, it kind of trickles down to these other people. But what kind of happens also, well, not kind of, what does happen is that suddenly you have people who will kind of migrate towards you,
right,
and become a support.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And the less that you keep a secret, even though it's not easy. It's not always easy to just kind of let that stuff out.
No, it's a very hard process.
But if you don't keep that secret, it makes it so much harder for the addict because they no longer have someone who's holding their water.
You're not coddling them.
Yeah,
you're not coddling the addiction,
and it shines light. And
it shines light,
and that's one of the things that I think I've continuously said is that we need to shine light on this, you know. And again, I'm I don't have a solution for what to do with the addict. You know, I really don't.
Well, and that's because that's a scenario individual by individual.
But I feel like the surrounding community, you know, of that person, if we get healthy,
right?
What does that do for that other?
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like you see what. Okay, so
yeah.
So an important part in the program, you know, in recovery, is that recovering addicts live in recovery, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody new coming in sees that,
right?
And you know, we all question it at first, you know, because it's like, yeah, is he really like that? But when you start to see that that person really lives their life that way,
yeah,
it becomes intriguing, and then pretty soon it becomes, okay, I kind of want that, and then it's like, I need to start living like that, you know?
Yeah.
And so if we as a community who surrounds these addicts live a life that is open, and is not tolerant,
right?
Because I don't want anyone to think that I think you should just let the addict run wild. You know, I mean, I did, and it did not turn out well.
No, it doesn't work. You have to operate within the fence,
right? You know, but if we're healthy and we have that relationship with God, and we find ourselves caring, you know, because I know that there's something in the Bible about loving your neighbor, you know, and so if you have that in you, there's a real gift in loving your neighbor. Yeah. There really is inside.
Well, here's what's really great, the multiple contexts to that. Sure. You know, the Bible says they'll know you are my disciples for your love for one another. And they bring that love to the church. He's talking to the church and how the church relates to each other within its own body. But what's beautiful even more about that is to realize that these individuals who make up the church come from all different walks of life, tons of different cultures, tons of different stories, tons of different, let's modernize it, tons of different addictions, different family dynamics, right? But they come into this environment and they are brought into this new family, a new brotherhood of sorts, where there's this camaraderie that is now shared because of this new life you've been given, this new direction that you're walking in. And that brotherhood comes with this camaraderie that, like, hey, I've got your back. You know, in the early church, in the book of Acts, it says when someone in the church had a need, the other disciples would go to help meet that need. So if somebody owed taxes or owed money to the government, this is a very unique thing. It's like they would willingly. It was not compulsed. It was done willingly. If someone had an extra field, they would sell the extra portions of their field and take the proceeds and give it to the church, and then the church would use those funds to help meet this the need of the body in there. Right. And so they did that. If someone had an extra room, they would use that extra room. And they would share to meet the other person's burdens. And they loved each other. And then again, this is a unified group of people, numbering in the thousands, that is made up of different families, different stories, different issues, different junk, but yet they all came with this one common denominator of, this is where I'm going in life. Right. This is the direction I want to walk in. In regards to the addict, seeing somebody walking in recovery, hey, that guy has what I want. So I'm going to start walking in his direction. Right. And they do. And in so doing, they realize this brotherhood that comes alongside them and says, hey, great, you're in this. Right. We're going to make sure that you walk this way with us, and we're going to help you. We're going to ask you the tough questions. We're going to support you, because guess what? Just because we're in recovery doesn't mean that monster's dead. That monster's still there.
It is.
We're going to make sure,
even to this day,
but we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you don't let its claws back on your head.
Right.
You know, and that's again, that's a tough thing. Right. But it's amazing how that kind of comes into play. And again, that starting point where the community comes in with something greater than themselves, says, here you go. This is the way to walk in recovery. Here's the tools. We're gonna walk with you. We're gonna shine a light on this. We're not gonna hide the junk anymore. Right. We're not gonna let you do that. And we ask that initial tough question so that recovery starts. And then as that recovery is going, other people are pulled into that as well. I love when I hear of like peer recovery groups or
Mm-hmm.
individuals who have gone through their own, they've entered their own recovery cycles. They've entered their own seasons of recovery, and they're walking in that. And how they turn around and they say, "Okay, I'm going to grab as many as I can. They're going to come with me in this."
Right.
To echo Paul, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament, he has this thing about when he talks about being a leader and being a Christian. He says, "Follow me as I follow Christ."
Right.
This whole idea of like I'm on this journey and I'm gonna pull you with me, and that the whole idea of that community involvement, that recovery involvement is you're not alone. You're not hiding in your secrets. You're not going to stay in that mess,
Right.
in that addictive mindset. We're gonna pull you out, and we're not gonna hide the junk anymore.
Right. And so, addicts go through quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, I know they seem weak,
Right.
but they're actually very strong
Oh,
people.
absolutely.
And
What we're saying here though
no,
is
no,
like is that the addiction
yeah,
is stronger than the strength that the addict possesses.
Right.
Now the addict is still very very strong, but we're saying the addiction is
it's a whole different beast.
why I say monster and beast and we use
Right.
those phrases.
But what I'm getting at is that, you know, when they finally find recovery,
Yeah.
it's okay to be honest and pretty forthright with whatever it is that you want to ask or
Yeah.
whatever it is you want to say.
They just got done
Because they
dealing with the
have that
monster.
strength.
They're strong enough to handle your confrontation.
Yeah, and not only that, it's probably good to have to kind of, I don't know if I want to say push them, but kind of have them confront that honesty in themselves, because that's the first thing that we as addicts need to do is we need to be honest with ourselves, and we can't be honest with ourselves if people aren't.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
happened, because I want to deny it.
Right.
First thing I want to do is I want to deny it, pretend like it didn't happen. It's a secret. Never good for me.
Yeah.
So
No, that's good.
So I know we should probably wrap this
Yeah,
up.
I got a closing statement I want
Right.
to make, but yeah, no, you go ahead.
So my point in this particular thing is that, or this particular
Session.
yeah, is that an addict, everything is secondary to the addiction.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful, and it has a grip on people that is, it can't break it alone.
Right.
You just can't.
Yeah.
I couldn't break it alone. Even when I was at the lowest point, I couldn't do it on my own. I had to have something that intervened, and I would like to see that intervention, whatever it may be, happens prior to somebody having to go to jail and prison,
Mhm.
or going to some kind of mental institution, and definitely before they die.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so in order for that to happen, I feel like people need to really fully understand what addiction,
Yeah.
and obviously I don't know that you can understand it fully unless if you actually been an addict.
Yeah.
But to give you a better understanding, and also to understand that that if you look around the addict, it's those people who are around them that if they are healthy and they are in going in the right direction, because that's really what we want for everybody in life, right?
Mhm.
But if they're going in that right direction and they're healthy and they have a relationship with God, it shines a light
Yeah.
on the addict, and it makes it harder for them to function and to kind of run around in the shadows, and so I mean, obviously my dream in the world would be that everybody
Yeah.
finds
Absolutely.
some sort of happiness and healthiness in their own life, and
I'll be set free from this.
so if you could do that, you have so much of a better chance of just helping somebody else, and if you can't help them,
Mhm.
that's okay too.
Yeah.
As long as you stay healthy, it's I don't know, that might have been really messy, the whole thing, and I'm sorry if that's the
Uh,
case, but you know,
what's the,
this is where I'm at. And
yeah. One of the things that that I think would be really great to conclude on this is recognizing that because of the beast and monster of addiction and how strong that is on the addict, that when it comes to the community responding to heal or to release the addict, that to recognize how strong that beast is, so that you know what level of strength you need to approach that on.
right.
Health, walk with God, the tools you're going to offer. You can't sit there and bring like go into a video game. You have a level 50 boss, and you're going to come out with you're going to approach it at level 10. You're going to be wiped out. You're going to be toast.
Right.
But if he's at a certain level, you need to make sure that you are exceeding that in order for that addict to be released. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And that's, I think that's important here, is recognizing and seeing the why health is so important, why your spiritual walk is so important, having those supports. But then framing that from the perspective of how great and controlling addiction is, now you can see why it is so important when we come at that.
Right.
And why it matters, why we are adamant about intervention, adamant about recovery, adamant about all this stuff, is because these tools are so important. They're so big, and they matter for somebody who is stuck in this mess.
Right.
And that's why I think why I love our passion for that,
Right.
and we get fired up, and why these conversations are very raw, they're very adult. And it's because we're dealing with a very monstrous thing that has got to have the light shed on it, and so that is really good. So
right, and I so they have this saying, that an addict will drag you down before you can pull them up. Active addict.
yeah,
And there's some truth to that.
there is.
And because there is there's a like my mom, even though she knew what was going on, and wanted to get away from it and everything else, I always pulled her back in. Like, I need this, and and was very manipulative and everything else. But that doesn't show. It's not her weakness,
Right.
It's my weakness that I felt like I had to do all that, and so we need to stop looking at it like it's your weakness, right, or your whatever. You can't, I don't know if that made complete sense.
No,
but
it does.
But the strength that you will get is never going to come necessarily from yourself.
It's got to be. It's got to be beyond it.
It's going to be the people around you, and it's going to be, your spiritual.
That spiritual component, the spiritual
right,
life as well. Yeah,
right,
absolutely. And that's why it matters having something that is stronger than you, as you go into reach something stronger, bigger than you, to reach an individual that's going there, and why it matters. So, thank you so much for enjoying this, and we appreciate your time. And God bless you, and we'll see you next time.